Sa taxation natin. So, ang gobyerno can only prod. Hindi naman kailangan na reminder sa Malacanang. Nandyan yung BIR, so tanongin natin yung BIR, bakit hanggang ngayon hindi na kolekta yung estate tax.
That was President Duterte telling the Tax Bureau and asking it why estate taxes have not been collected yet. President Duterte made the remark while he was in the middle of defending e-sabong operations. He said the cash-strapped government can benefit hugely from tax collections.
The chief executive, however, did not identify anyone in particular, but the conversation on estate taxes in the country have revolved primarily around the Marcos heirs, as several groups have been calling on their family to settle their multi-billion peso unpaid tax dues. Time for today's biggest headlines. I'm Gretchen Ho.
I'm Robbie Alampay. You're watching The Big Story. Presidential candidate Ferdinand Marcos Jr. is at the receiving end of criticism for his family's failure to settle 23 billion pesos worth of estate taxes that have ballooned over time.
When asked if the president was referring to Ferdinand Marcos Jr. when he made that comment on estate taxes, the palace said he was simply reminding the BIR of its mandate to collect taxes. Maricel Halili with the big story.
In his pre-recorded weekly address to the people, the president was making the case as to why he backs the continued operation of e-sabong in the Philippines, when out of nowhere, Duterte called out the Tax Bureau for its failure to collect estate taxes.
Sa taxation natin. So, ang gobyerno can only prod. Hindi naman kailangan na reminder sa Malacanang. Nandyan yung BIR, so tanongin natin yung BIR, bakit hanggang ngayon hindi na kolekta yung estate tax.
The chief executive did not name names, but news about unpaid estate taxes of the Marcoses have been hogging the headlines since campaign season started. After all, not only is Marcos heir Ferdinand Marcos Jr. running for the highest post in the land, he has also been leading pre-election surveys. In 1997, the High Court ruled that the Marcos estate tax of 23 billion pesos is already final. That has already ballooned to 203 billion pesos. The president said government is in need of cash amid the pandemic, hence the need to allow e-sabong as it generates 640 million pesos a month, even if it has led to the disappearances of dozens of enthusiasts.
I make it public now. It's 640 million a month. And in a year's time, it's billion plus. Saan tayo maghanap ng pera ng gano'n na kadali?
Asked if the president was referring to the Marcoses, acting spokesperson Martin Andanar said the president was simply reminding the BIR of its mandate.
Hindi lang sa kung sinong politiko o personalidad, abay dapat sa lahat na hindi nagbabayad, habulin ng BIR sapagkat kailangan ng karagdagang pondo ang ating national government.
Marcos Jr. has yet to comment on the matter. His running mate, Sara Duterte, deferred to her father when asked for comment. Marcos Jr. said there have been a lot of fake news involved in their unpaid estate taxes. He also remains hopeful of the president's endorsement. For News 5, Maricel Halili, We Are One News.
What measures could the BIR do to collect the reported unpaid estate taxes of the Marcoses? That big question and more with tax expert Mon Abrea, CEO and Senior Tax Advisor of Asian Consulting Group. Good evening, Mr. Abrea, and welcome again to The Big Story.
Good evening.
Mr. Abrea, again, we have to say, President Duterte did not necessarily refer to Bongbong Marcos in this particular statement, but we have been talking about the estate taxes of Bongbong Marcos since last year, since no less than Senior Associate Justice Antonio Carpio brought it up. There is a Supreme Court decision on it already, so taking it at face from what Justice Carpio pointed out, what is stopping the BIR from collecting on those taxes?
I think based on the statement made by Finance Secretary, it's clear that the BIR is making a demand. They're trying to collect. It's just that the camp of Marcoses well, they are not responding or they're not doing anything about it.
Okay. So in that case, when the BIR is trying to collect and they keep reminding, and an entity or a person refuses to do so, is there an additional crime on top, or is there an additional offense or crime on top of not paying the original taxes?
Of course, willful attempt not to pay or to evade taxes is grounds for tax evasion. But just to explain it a bit, the BIR is actually exhausting its administrative remedy through the warrant of distraint and or levy. But they also have a judicial remedy, which is filing criminal charges.
Okay. And at what point does that come into play? Or do we just keep, does the BIR, is there a limit to which the BIR can exercise these administrative options? And is there a certain point when they will have to take it to the criminal route?
I don't think there is a deadline. I think it's literally the decision of the government how to handle the case, since it's been 30 years. And in fact, it can be a legacy of the Duterte administration if in fact they will be able to put an end to this unpaid 203 billion estate tax liability of the Marcos family.
It could be their legacy. On the other hand, as you pointed out, more than 30 years already, going on 30 years already. So theoretically, this can also go on and on and on and on.
That's why I think the suggestion of the former Supreme Court Justice Carpio is very important to consider already filing criminal charges.
Okay, maraming salamat po. That was Mon Abrea, CEO and Senior Tax Advisor for the Asian Consulting Group. Meanwhile, the Department of Finance has set the record straight on the Marcos estate taxes. They say the Marcos family has not taken steps to settle nor pay because of litigation. Finance Secretary Carlos Dominguez says the Bureau of Internal Revenue continues to demand that the Marcos family settle their unpaid estate taxes. Dominguez adds the Bureau will continue to consolidate the titles in favor of government on those properties which have been levied upon.
These are the other big stories tonight. President Duterte once again slammed party list groups under the Makabayan bloc, accusing them of being legal fronts of the Communist Party of the Philippines. Meanwhile, the Philippine Consulate General urges Filipinos in the U.S. to stay vigilant as 2 more Pinoys fell victim to hate crimes in New York. An odd-even coding scheme or a 4-number coding ban, MMDA proposes new schemes to lessen the traffic in Metro Manila. These big stories after the break.
You're still watching The Big Story. I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Ho.
President Rodrigo Duterte has once again accused political parties under the Makabayan bloc of having ties with the Communist Party of the Philippines.
Bayan Muna calls the move a political squid tactic meant to undermine opposition groups. Greg Gregorio has a report.
As was his wont, the president has made fresh red tagging allegations, this time directly calling out party lists under the Makabayan bloc, including Bayan Muna, ACT Teachers Party List, Anak Pawis, Kabataan Party List, and Gabriela. The chief executive said the groups aim to put an end to the government.
Kinakuha nila yung pera ng gobyerno. Alam mo, it's a conspiracy. And in conspiracy, meron kang legal front, meron kang may mga party list.
Bayan Muna Representative Carlos Zarate slammed the allegations, even calling it part of a so-called squid tactic, now that they support the presidential bid of Vice President Leni Robredo.
Bayan Muna is a legitimate party. It's registered with the COMELEC. This is designed as a political squid tactic against the Makabayan bloc as well as the political opposition. Kami ay mga unarmed activists, no? Hindi kami mga rebelde.
The poll body acknowledged that the president might be receiving intelligence report, but noted still that party lists have gone through accreditation in line with existing laws.
Basta na kapag meron kang advokasya, lalo na sa mga nominees, patungkol sa sektor na nire-represent mo, then pwede ka maging nominee ng party list na yon.
Furthermore, the COMELEC pointed out that the deadline for petitions against candidates has already lapsed. The Makabayan bloc recently launched a complaint before the COMELEC against the red tagging activities of some officials of the Anti-Insurgency Task Force or NTF-ELCAC. The COMELEC, however, has yet to rule on this complaint. For News 5, Greg Gregorio, we are One News.
Vice President Leni Robredo and Senator Vico Pangilinan were not all received all too warmly in southern Leyte as they were in adjacent province Samar. Nonetheless, Robredo promised to help families that are still recovering from Typhoon Odette. Gerard de la Peña with this report.
The Team Tropa of Vice President Leni Robredo and Senator Vico Pangilinan went off track on Wednesday. They made a random visit to Barangay San Jose in Sugod, southern Leyte, which was not part of their itinerary. But it was a much-needed detour for the team. Typhoon Odette heavily battered the barangay in December last year, with several houses pummeled to the ground. Some 60 fishermen and their families received 10,000 pesos each to help them start over. Yet, many are still unable to have their houses repaired. Robredo blamed government bureaucracy for their slow recovery.
Ang mapapangako lang po namin, kung kami bigyan nyo ng pagkakataon, hindi kayo papahirapan ng ganito, lalo na sa sakuna. Ang dami pong pampapeles na hinihingi. May mga pictures ka pang hinihingi. Sa oras ba naman ng sakuna na nawalan ka ng bahay, yun po ba yung iisipin mo? Kaya ito, may problema talaga sa bureaucracia na kailangan nating palitan.
Robredo and Pangilinan also graced the rally in Maasin, southern Leyte. Reception here was not as warm compared to how they were received in northern and eastern Samar. After all, this is a known bailiwick of the Marcoses. But Robredo said she is content with the support she is getting despite losing in the province back in 2016.
Sa Leyte, saka sa southern Leyte, saka sa Biliran, ang expected namin mahihirapan kaming mag-organize. Pero unexpectedly, pagpunta namin, may mga organized groups na. Na yun yung opportunity and yung balak talaga namin, we will build on that.
For News 5, Gerard de la Peña, we are One News.
For students out there, if you have an assignment on local government, why not ask the mayor?
That's exactly what one Pasigueño did as she asked Mayor Vico Sotto his thoughts about citizens' participation in the planning processes of LGUs. While in a campaign caucus, Sotto uploaded the photo of his answer in response to a private Twitter user. In his answer, the re-electionist mayor said that ordinary citizens should take advantage of all mechanisms for participation that government has to offer. Sotto then went on to detail what the public can do from a barangay level all the way to the city level.
In his tweet, Sotto also apologized for his penmanship, adding as well that he was referring to a DILG memorandum circular. An outflow of support greeted Sotto as many were impressed by his answer. There were also those who wanted to ask Mayor Vico for some help in their assignment, which he said good luck instead. Pinabasa ko yung kanina. Haba ng sagot ni Mayor eh. Tungkol sa local government. Sabi ko, alam niya yung ginagawa niya.
Tsaka at least ay kudos din sa kabataan. Nagtatanong na ng mga, okay lang magtanong ng homework. Di naman siguradong sasagutin. At least nung panahon namin, pag tinanong yung mayor, tatanungin lang kung may pasok bukas eh.
So development yan. Good luck na lang sa student. Sana maintindihan niya yung sinulat. Time for another quick break. When we return. 2 more elderly Filipinos were beaten and robbed in New York as hate crimes toward Asians continue to be a cause for concern.
Meanwhile, the MMDA is proposing 2 new number coding schemes in an effort to lessen the volume of cars on the road. Motorists and advocacy groups have reservations.
And how an ugly breakup can turn into a live-selling phenomena on Facebook. A peek at the first asawang sumakabilang buhay live auction. These big stories after the break.
You're still watching The Big Story. I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Ho. MMDA proposes 2 new number coding schemes to lessen the volume of cars on the road by as much as 50%.
Transport advocacy groups, however, say the new model might only push motorists to buy more cars. Marian Enriquez has this report.
As restrictions have eased in Metro Manila under Alert Level 1, one heavy problem also made its comeback: bumper-to-bumper traffic. As a solution, the MMDA has proposed 2 new number coding schemes. First is a reimposition of the odd-even scheme meant to reduce traffic by half. Cars with plates ending in odd numbers will not be allowed on roads during rush hours every Monday and Thursday. Those with plates ending in even numbers will follow suit on Tuesdays and Fridays. There will be no coding on Wednesdays. The other proposal is a twice-a-week coding meant to reduce volume by 40%. All vehicles will also be banned from roads for at least twice a week. As early as now, some motorists are not so thrilled with the proposal.
Paano pag parehas na add yung ng number mo, di ba?
So mas preferred ko pa rin yung dati, yung 7, tama ba? 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. At least once lang.
For the group Move as One coalition, this can prompt motorists to just buy another vehicle.
It encourages people to go out and buy a second car and to use that car also to create more traffic and more pollution. This is not something we need at this time.
The problem right now is that a lot of our road space is dedicated to private motor vehicles.
But according to Move as One Coalition, only about 12% of Filipinos own cars here in Metro Manila, while 5% for the whole country. The coalition suggests that it is better for the government to focus on making the mass public transportation system more efficient and providing safer bike lanes and sidewalks.
We need to think of our client as the person who does not use a car. And once we do that, we need to apply a different approach to traffic management transportation policy.
Besides these proposed coding schemes, the MMDA is also recommending a 4-day work week. For News 5, Marian Enriquez, we are One News.
Are we in the COVID-19 endgame now in the country? Health experts say nothing is certain yet. Despite this, Health Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergere says vaccination helped bring down the number of COVID cases in the country. She says protection from 2 doses appears to be effective despite 30 million more Filipinos yet to receive their booster shots. The health department says daily cases could go down to more than 200 by end of April. Nevertheless, Vergere doesn't deny the possibility of a new wave of infections, which is the trend now in some countries.
Pag sinabi po ng mga experts natin, baka magkaroon, the possibility is always there. The risks are here. There is no certainty as to the variants that will come in the country. Kailangan lang natin talaga sumunod tayo dun sa mga protocols na meron tayo for safety.
Two more Filipinos were attacked in separate areas in Midtown Manhattan and New York as the Philippine Consulate General called on authorities to do more to prevent such attacks. Jem Avancenia with the details.
Assaulted, pushed to ground and robbed, this 73-year-old Filipino was on his way to church when a homeless man in Manhattan attacked him. The victim believes he also heard racial slurs being hurled at him. The same thing happened to a 53-year-old Pinoy who was at a McDonald's along 7th Avenue near 34th Street. He was also beaten unconscious and robbed by another homeless man. The 2 elderly Filipinos were the latest victims of attacks against members of the Filipino community in New York City. In Manhattan alone, 7 hate crime cases against the Filipino community have already been reported. While in total, 34 incidents have been reported since last year. Just 2 weeks ago, a Filipino was also beaten by a suspect in Yonkers, New York, which the police said was an unprovoked attack. In a statement, the Philippine Consulate General condemned the attacks, saying that this, quote, senseless violence has left many Filipinos in fear. The consulate also reiterated their reminder to Filipinos in New York to exercise vigilance at all times and to take the necessary precautions, especially when in public. For News 5, Jem Avancenia, we are One News.
I remember I was in New York last year, around December, and talagang naramdaman ko yung discrimination. I mean, you could feel that you were kind of afraid for your own safety when you're going into restaurants, when you're dealing with other people. Parang naramdam mo eh.
Tsaka lungkot lang, di ba? Parang ang hirap tingnan yung mga eksenang ganyan. Hindi lang tayo mga Pilipino, all other Asians and so on. And it's just really a troubling scene. I hope that they can find a way to somehow solve that problem.
We hope it gets better and yun nga, hindi ma-identify yung Asians with COVID pandemic. Meanwhile, in lighter news, as they say, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. A Filipina live seller on Facebook has become an overnight sensation star for selling her cheating husband's valuable possessions. It's called the first asawang sumakabilang bahay live selling in the Philippines, and it became a huge hit with people online. In the now viral video, Jamil Margarita Galvez auctions off a variety of items from her husband's closet, including branded shirts, basketball caps, and shoes. Some were even limited edition. Jamil also did not mince words while live selling as she took multiple swipes at her husband and his mistress. As of now, she has already garnered 300,000 pesos from the live selling, which she will use to provide for their children.
Guys, itong live na to, ang tawag dito is live selling ng asawang sumakabilang bahay. Paki-mind nyo lahat, no, para masoldat na natin lahat ng basura na to, ha? Okay? Ito sobrang tino pa ng mga item na to. Yung may-ari lang hindi matino.
Magandang ideya yun, ha? Okay yun, ha? Oo, kaysa naman, di ba, magwalo ka, umiyak ka, magbenta ka na lang ng mga yayaman ka pa.
Gusto ko makita yung video ng asawa.
Reaction?
Yung reaction video.
Ay, aabangan natin yan. Oo. Baka din may selling din siya, no? Ay, magandang series yun. Oo. At sana, hindi nga sumakabilang buhay yung...
Tinuluyan mo na. Sumakabilang bahay po, hindi sumakabilang buhay.
Well, that wraps up today's Big Story. Catch us again tomorrow at 8 p.m. on Signal Channels 8 and 250.
Please like our Facebook page, One News. For more in-depth analysis, visit our webpage, onenews.ph. Mask on.
Wash hands.
And stay safe, Philippines. I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Ho. We are One News. Have a good evening.